She's my mother's closest friend. If I hadn't gone to the villa that day, everything might have been different. My name is Tyler. I'm 23. I live with my mom in San Diego. I work as a graphic designer at a modest marketing agency downtown. I'm not much for big crowds or parties. But when my mom turned 50 and decided to host a grand celebration in our backyard, I couldn't say no. She'd spent months preparing. I didn't object. She rarely did anything extravagant for herself. And this time she seemed truly excited. That evening, the backyard was glowing under strings of soft yellow lights. Balloons swayed gently with the breeze. Laughter and light conversation filled the air. Guests ranged from old college friends to current coworkers, neighbors we've known forever, and distant relatives I could barely recognize from holiday get-togethers. Everyone seemed at ease. I stood quietly near the patio, a beer in hand, nodding politely at comments like, "You've grown so much. Remember when you used to run around covered in chocolate?" I'd always felt a bit out of place in crowds, but that night something felt different. I kept glancing at someone. Karen. Yes, Karen. It took a few seconds to remember her properly. She was one of my mom's oldest friends. I'd seen her at gatherings before. Quiet, polite woman who often brought wine and wore a warm, subdued smile. But tonight she looked different. She wore a simple, dark blue dress. Her hair was loose, and her eyes held a quiet peace. She didn't demand attention, but somehow made you want to keep watching, like the sound of a distant melody. Familiar but hard to name. I reminded myself, this was my mother's friend, at least 10 years older, divorced, off limits. But the more I tried to turn my thoughts away, the more drawn I became. Maybe it was the ease with which she stood, not trying to impress anyone. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was just me feeling something I didn't expect. I drank too quickly. Probably because I felt uneasy in my own skin. Or maybe because the feeling growing inside me was too hard to name. That night, I had no idea that one impulsive sentence spoken through a fog of alcohol and loneliness would shift the course of my life. A sentence that might have sounded like a joke to anyone else. But to me, it was the beginning of something unexpected, something real. I stood by the drink table, finishing my third beer without noticing. The party was still lively music. Playing, people laughing, but my attention was fixed on Karen. She stood talking to my aunt, laughing gently, leaning in to hear better. She wasn't trying to stand out. She just was. I kept telling myself to go help inside, pick up some plates, refill drinks. But I stayed rooted, watching her. Every small motion, the way she brushed her hair, the way she tilted her head, all stayed with me. I wasn't fully drunk, but I felt stripped of the shell I usually carried. I can't remember when exactly I decided to move. One second I was frozen, the next I was walking toward her. She stood near the back porch under the string lights. "Hi, Karen," I said, voice a little tight with nerves. She turned to me, recognizing me instantly. Her smile was soft, warm. "Tyler, wow, look at you, all grown up." I laughed awkwardly. "Thanks for coming. I wouldn't miss it." "Your mom's like a sister to me," she replied. Her voice was kind, comforting. I meant to say something nice and walk away. But something in me, some tired mix of wine and quiet ache, pushed the words out. Words I'd remember forever. "I'd do anything just to be with you for a moment." The world seemed to pause. Karen didn't flinch. She didn't smile or scold. She just looked at me, calm but unreadable. Expression made me feel small but not rejected. I felt my face heat with embarrassment. I gave a tiny nod, like an apology, then stepped back. "No, I just—" "Okay," I said, then turned around before she could respond. My heart thundered. Dot. I didn't know what I'd just done. The rest of the party blurred into background noise. I helped clean up, chatted with some guests, then finally collapsed onto the sofa. My head was pounding. That moment played on repeat in my mind. What had I said? Why? That sentence? I mumbled as I drifted to sleep. 10 words like bullets from a gun I didn't know I carried. The next morning, I woke still on the couch, jeans on, mouth dry. The house was quiet, balloons sagging, wine bottles left on the kitchen counter. I stumbled into the kitchen, drank a full glass of water, then slumped back down. Out of habit, I picked up my phone. There was a message. It's from Karen. If what you said last night is true, I want to talk more. I stared at it, blinked, as if willing. It too vanished. Then I read it again and again. Was it true? I didn't remember the exact words, but I remembered the feeling. That was real. I opened the reply box, typed something, erased it, tried again, deleted. Finally, I sent, I miss you. If you're open to it, I'd like to meet. I set the phone down, heart racing like I was back in school, about to give a speech. Within 5 minutes, a reply. This afternoon. There's a quiet cafe near the center. I'll send the address. I spent that afternoon doing nothing useful, changing shirts, brushing my teeth again, sitting in front of the mirror like I was preparing for an interview I didn't study for. My mind ran wild with questions. What would she say? Was I about to get laughed at? Would my mom show up? I laughed nervously at myself. Still I went. I arrived early, found a quiet corner table facing the entrance. The cafe was mostly empty. Gentle music played. It felt like the calm before something big. Karen walked in at exactly 3:06. She wore a soft green sweater, jeans, and her hair tied back. No makeup. She didn't need it. She saw me and smiled just enough to knock the breath out of me. Hello, she said gently. Hey. I stood, then sat down too fast, nearly spilling the water in front of me. We ordered coffee, sat across from each other. After a few seconds, Karen broke the silence. Do you remember what you said last night? I nodded, throat dry. Yeah. It the wine, or did you mean it? I swallowed. Maybe the wine helped me say it, but it wasn't a lie. She looked at me, then offered a faint smile, not surprised, not dismissive, just present. I didn't hate hearing it, she said. I just don't know what to make of it. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. For the first time since the party, I felt no regret. She stirred her coffee, still watching me, not pressuring, not avoiding. I felt I needed to say something. I figured honesty was the only way forward. I've noticed you for a while, I said. I just never imagined I'd say something, 'cause you're my mom's friend. She tilted her head slightly. Because of that, and because you're older, wiser, more experienced. I don't know what it is. But last night, I couldn't pretend anymore. She was quiet for a beat. I've been divorced for 4 years. She said at last, no children. I don't think about love much. When someone says something heartfelt, I question it. I met her eyes. I'm not asking for anything. I just thought, if you feel even a little something, we should talk. Leaned her chin on her hand, thinking, I'm 23, I said, surprisingly calm. I've got a lot ahead, but I'm here, not hiding. Karen smiled again, just a little. It's been a long time since someone surprised me, in a good way. I've never had a conversation so layered, honest but reserved, emotional but grounded. When the coffee was gone and just melted ice remained, Karen stood, picking up her purse. I'm not making promises, she said. But if you still want to talk, I'll listen. I nodded, smiling openly. We stepped out into the golden light. She turned, eyes brighter than before. Let's keep this between us. Okay, I said. She turned and walked away. And I stood there, feeling something I couldn't quite name, something that made it all real. Later, Kieran chose a park near Balboa for our next meeting. A quiet space, shaded with green. The air carried the smell of damp grass. I got there early, took a slow walk to calm my nerves, then spotted her sitting on a bench holding coffee in a paper cup. She wore a plain white shirt, jeans, sunglasses. When she saw me, she took them off and smiled just enough to steady me. You're right on time. She said. We began to walk along the paved path that skirted the lake. Our steps were slow, neither of us in a hurry, the atmosphere between us wasn't tensible. It wasn't exactly comfortable either then. Karen spoke softly. You know, I thought I was going to have a family. I glanced over because of the divorce. Yeah, she nodded. It's not that as bad. We just drifted apart. When we realized that there was nothing left to hold on to, her voice wasn't sad. It was matter of fact. I thought I would have kids, button work time, everything just took me away, and then one day, I found myself sitting alone eating dinner, not sad but empty. We stopped at a bend with a bench overlooking. The lake. Karen sat down first. I sat next to her. The lake reflected the evening sky rippled by Thuund. She continued, her voice slower. I don't feel like I'm broken, but I feel like I'm cautious. I don't want to play games. I don't want to hurt anyone, especially your mother. She's my best friend. Turned to look at her and said, honestly, I don't think this is a game. I don't want to hurt anyone either. Karen looked at me directly for the first time since we started walking. Then, why did you say that? That night, I paused for a moment because I've been interested in you for a long time and never dared to admit it. The alcohol just made me go faster. But feelings aren't illusions, she chuckled. You know, I'm 12, she laughed. Years older than you, I know, and that doesn't make me feel any less. I answered without hesitation. What do you think this is, she asked, not harshly. It's just genuinely curious, I don't. No, I breathed, but I don't want to pretend it never happened. I want to find out. Karen looked down at her hands, then back up at Lake. The silence lasted a few seconds. You surprised me, and that's not bad. We stood up and continued walking slowly. Along the shore, no one saw anything more, but the atmosphere was different, lighter, softer. When we got to the parking lot, she turned to me. Her smile no longer reserved. Thanks for not making this awkward, I smiled. Thanks for not disappearing after that text. She touched my arm lightly, said nothing more, and opened the car door. I stood and watched as she drove away, filled with a vague but real feeling, as if a door had. Albina penned silently and with promise after our walk in the park. Wouldn't make any specific promises. No one talked about the next time we'd see each other. No one named what was going on between us. But that evening, as I was reviewing a half-finished video for a client, my phone lit up with a text message. It's a nice evening. She just sat on the balcony for 10 minutes. Just listening to the wind, I read the message over and over again, as if it were some strange signal that had just fallen from the universe. Then I texted back simply, I'm listening to the fan and the deadline behind me. Less than a minute later, a new message arrived. I guess you're the type of person who drums Ona. New message your desk while you work. I laughed out loud, and from then on, the short conversations gradually became a part of the day. Not regular, not urgent, but always timely. One day, she sent me a photo of a cat lying on the railing with the caption, I'm in a retirement from adult role. One day I sent a photo of a cup of instant noodles, writing your high-class culinary work today. We still kept our distance, not calling it a relationship, not using words that could. It's misunderstood, but between the humorous messages, there were still small pieces of truth that slipped through. She asked me about work, about things that stressed me out. I asked her about how it felt to be alone, about what made her feel secure. A week after the park, she took the initiative to call me for the first time. I was lying lazily on the bed when the phone vibrated, the screen showing Karen. I picked up, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my heart was beating a little fast. Hello? I don't know. I called maybe because your message today made me laugh. Out loud, her voice was soft with something warm like a background music of the afternoon. What did you say? That if you had a week off, you would sleep for 3 days, eat for 2 days, and not talk to anyone for 2 days, Elad? That's the ideal life plan? We talked for about 20 minutes, mostly about trivial things, movies, strange encounters with acquaintances on the street, the story of my mother burning down an oven when she was young because she forgot to take out the bread. Nothing too deep, but enough for me to know she was opening the door just a little. The calls became more frequent, not every night, but each time was enough to make 'em look forward to it. One day, she called while she was doing the dishes, listening to the sound of running water and the clinking of plates. One day I called while I was walking home, and she asked me to describe the scenery as if she were with me, that feeling, connecting without touching, understanding without name, was something I had never experienced before. It wasn't like a momentary infatuation. It was like finding a familiar rhythm in a song you'd never heard, but knew every tune. I never texted you miss you or I like you, but when I wrote today, I heard that old song you mentioned, and it felt strangely comforting. She replied, I'm listening to it too at the same time as you. I think no more was needed. I knew she was there, no noise, no rush, and that was one One Friday afternoon, as I was leaving a long online meeting Karen's Mace, came like a breath of fresh air. I'm renting a small Airbnb by the sea for the weekend. Want to get away. Fromel the noise, are you free without thinking too long? I texted back, give meth address the apartment. She chose was located in a quiet coastal area not far from the city, but far enough to make everything feel isolated. It was compact and warm with light-colored wood furniture, a few potted plants neatly placed in the corners of the room, and a large window that looked straight out to the sea. A scented candle sat on the windowsill, smelling faintly of vanilla and dried flowers. I arrived just as the sun was setting, not yet completely darker, and greeted me in a thin sweater and shorts. She left her hair down her face, abari, or at least very lightly made up, enough for me to feel like I was entering her private world without the need to perform or cover up. I made tea come in. We sat on the sofa, sipping hot Hatha Keish's music playing softly from the Bluetooth speaker next to the book. Neither of us spoke much, just small talk about the day at work, about a book she was reading, about the Italian dish I'd burned. A pot of the atmosphere was gentle enough to make my heart relax, but also tense with unspoken things as the night wind began to blow through the crack in the door. Karen pulled a thin blanket over the two of us. I sat a little closer, not on purpose, just the distance naturally narrowed my hand was close enough to hers, so close that a slight movement would have touched. Then we fell silent, a kind of silence that wasn't forced, just waiting. I turned to look at her. She looked at me too. Those eyes weren't probing, not timid, just waiting to see if I dared to take the remaining half-steppy, reached out and touched her hand. Her gaze softened, her smile flickering like a green light, and then I leaned in. Thecus was as light as the ocean. Breeze on skin, not rushed, not overwhelming, just a confirmation that we both felt this. We didn't say anything for a moment. Karen rested her head on my shoulder, so light it was almost weightless. After a moment she said softly, I didn't plan this neither. Did I? I said, still suspended in that strange feeling. She chuckled a little sadly. We need to keep this to ourselves for now. I nodded, I understand. She turned to look at me again. This time without reserve, but directly, because whatever this is, I don't want to lose it too soon. That night we did nothing more than sit together hand in hand, listening to waves crashing through the glass window. Everything seemed to be kept just right, real enough to make the heart flutter, vague enough to not need definition, but deep down, I knew something had begun. And it wasn't just impulsive. We didn't name our relationship, not one-time lovers, nor just friends with my mother, but after the night at the beach house, nothing between us was the same. We agreed to keep it a secret, not only because we were afraid my mother would find out, but because we both knew that if we let other people's eyes in too, soon this fragile seedling would have a hard time surviving from. Then on our love grew quietly in small moments, unexpected, trivial, but making my heart beat faster every time I remember them. One time my mother invited Karen to come over for lunch. I was washing glasses in the kitchen when she walked in. We just greeted each other like two normal acquaintances. But when me mother left the room to answer the phone, Karen walked over and whispered very quickly, loud enough for no one else, said, "Oh, here, you look good in that shirt." I didn't react, just smiled secretly. But that smile lasted until the afternoon. Other times we would meet after work. Karen would drive me a few blocks away from work, avoiding anyone she knew. We didn't go far, just driving around its quiet neighborhoods, stopping at small roadside eateries, or sitting quietly in the car listening to music. Nothing big needed to happen, just having each other was enough. You remember one night sitting in the car in a deserted parking lot near the beach. It was raining lightly outside, the windows were fogged up. We put on Karen's favorite old jazz songs. She leaned her head on my shoulder, saying nothing. I didn't ask her what she was thinking, just reached out and took her hand. Lavaine. That moment didn't need a name. We shared everyday things. Deadlines were giving me headaches. Her coworkers had loud voices. My mom was learning to cook Thai food and left the house smelling of lemongrass and chili for a week. But there were times when, in the middle of a cheerful conversation, Karen's eyes softened, her voice lowered. I don't know how long I can hide this. I didn't reply right away. I knew she wasn't looking for a promise. It's just a sense or a presence. We had a little ritual every morning. I would send the first message if I was the one who came home late that day, before, on the contrary, if she was the one who took the initiative to leave. She would send the first message. No one agreed on this, but both of us understood, and every morning the first message didn't say love or miss, just did yows. Sleep well, the weather is nice today. Don't forget to bring a jacket. Remember to drink water when sitting in front of the screen all day. Such messages simploin adorned. But to me are the clearest proof that love can grow silently without needing to be shown off. We are in love as silent but complete love, not loud, not declared but true to every breath, and even though no one knows, I don't need anyone to confirm whether it is true or not. I just know somewhere between the furtive glances, the silent messages, and the fleeting touches I am in Saturday night happy on. Saturday night, my mother hosted an intimate dinner at home, not as big as his last birthday, just a few close friends, including Karen, of course. He couldn't refuse to attend, even though I was a little nervous. We were so used to keeping our distance when other people were around, but I was always afraid of my mother's eyes, her sharp eyes that could see everything in the blink of an eye. Karen arrived on time. Wearing a simple black silk dress, her hair teed back and light makeup. She was still the usual Karen, calm, polite, and just charming enough, but I was different every time she smiled at someone, every time her eyes glanced at me for a moment. Me heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. We avoided looking at each other for too long. I talked to Uncle Paul, poured more wine for Aunt Mai, and helped my mother clean the dishesbit. Every action was a bit awkward, like a play performed under invisible pressure. After dinner, when everyone was gathered in the living room, my mother called me to the kitchen to help clean up. I followed without thinking until Shep put down her plate and looked at me with a sidelong glance. "You've been acting strange lately," I blinked. "What's wrong, Mom?" Silent, thoughtful, smiling for no reason. "Is something wrong?" I shook my head, trying to keep my voice calm. "It must be work. There's been a lot of deadlines these past few days." She nodded, not entirely believing me, but not pressing me then, as if it were just the slip of the tongue. Karen and I seemed tobe closer than before. I paused. An alarm bell rang in my head. I swallowed, looked at my mother for a second, then bent down to collect my glasses. She's my mother's friend. We've seen her so many times. We're just familiar faces. My mother didn't say anything more at that point. I just sat ease and continued washing the dishes, but I felt like someone had placed a stone in my chest, cold and heavy that night when the guests had all left. I texted Karen, "Mom is starting to get suspicious." She replied almost immediately, "I can feel it in her ice, Mabe. We should take a break for a bit." I read that text and felt my heart sink, not because I was angry, but because I knew she was right. We didn't say goodbye. Neither of us used the word break up, but in the days that followed, Karen stopped coming over. There were no more glances in the living room, no text messages under the dining table. Everything gritted to its normal quiet state. We still texted, but less often. Neither of us wanted to stress the other out. I missed her every day, but I kept it to myself. I began to understand that this love requires more than just emotions. It requires patience and courage, and sometimes even a pause. 3 weeks after that dinner, Karen and I met again, and I met again not by chance, nor because we couldn't bear the lawning anymore, but because we both knew it wasted time to have a serious talk. We chose a small park hidden behind a quiet residential area where there were a few stone benches facing the lotus pond. I arrived first, sitting and looking at the still water like a frosted mirror reflecting the silence between two people who had not dared to face each other honestly. Karen arrived ladder-walking lightly on the gravel path. She wore a white shirt and gray jeans, looking tired but still very beautiful in a practical way. When she sat down next to me, neither of us spoke for a long time. "I'm sorry for avoiding you," she said first, her voice as small as Thuand passing by. I shook my head. "No need to apologize. I understand, but I still feel like a coward." She turned to look at me. I thought I was strong enough to control everything, but the truth is, I'm scared. I looked straight into her eyes. "What are you most afraid of?" Karen hesitated, then said honestly, "Afraid of hurting your mother, afraid of losing a friendship that I've cherished for many years, and also afraid I'm dragging you into an unfairness." I clasped my hands together, looking down at the ground. "I wasn't dragged into anything. I chose to step in, but you're too young. Maybe in a year you'll want something else, someone else, and I don't have time to make mistakes." That sentence was like a light stab, not painful but smoldering. I didn't refute it right. Awajis asked, "So what if I don't change? What if this is what you really want, Shalut?" at me for a long time. In her eyes, I saw the struggle between reason and heart. Finally, she sighed. I don't know, whispered, I just know that every time you're quiet for too long. I check my phone like a teenager, and when I see your name pop up, I feel alive again. I don't know how to describe Thefleen. I just know that I reached out and took her hand, not hard, not forcing, just saying, I'm still here. I don't need you to be sure of anything right now. I just need you to know I'm not going anywhere. Karen lowered her head, her lips pursed as if trying to keep something from coming out. After a while, she said, Then let's just go slowly, step by step, no promises, but no letting go. I nodded. Slow is fine, as long as we were together. We sat like that hand in hand until the sun faded. No one said anything more, but we both understood. We had just crossed a new line, no longer a quiet emotional fragment, but a deliberate choice this. Love, though not easy, Estelle, worth preserving after our conversation in the park. Karen owned. I were no longer the same. Gone were the half-hearted encounters, the brief touches in the car, the morning text messages, asking, did you sleep well? We began to look straight at each other without avoiding each other, but at a threesome time, the fear was more evident than ever. One evening early in the week, Karen invited me to her house. My mother was away on a business trip for 2 days, and she had just finished a big project. Karen's apartment was as neat and tidy. She was, but tonight, something was different. Not because of the dim lights or the jazz, music playing, but because of the way she looked at me. I've been thinking a lot, she said as we sat together on the sofa, steaming cups of tea in front of us, about what I asked about. What if one day your mother found out about me being the one who betrayed her tryst? I was silent for a moment, then I said, honestly, it could happen, but that's between the three of us, not between you and me. But you could lose your mother. She said, her eyes downcast, and I'm not sure this love is worth it. I could sense the fear in her voice, not fear of society, fear of what people would say, but fear that I would regret it. If things fell apart, fear that I would blame her, fear that I would back down. I put my hand on hers, looked straight at her. Didn't choose this love to trade anyone, but I also won't give it up just because someone else isn't ready to understand. Karen looked at me for a long time, then turned away. I don't know if I have the strength to hurt anyone again, I said softly then. Let me say this for the first time, and if necessary for the last time. She turned around, her eyes bewildered. I didn't come into this to experiment. I didn't come out off curiosity or out of youthful impetuosity. I looked at you, listened to you, and loved you little by little, not out of spite but consciously. If you think I'll give up because of the hardship, you didn't really know me. Karen shed tears. Not many, not loud, just quiet drops like a valve that had just been opened after a long time of holding it in. She squeezed my hand tightly. I don't want you to be the one who has to bear it all, but I don't want to lose you either. I leaned closer, letting my forehead touch hers. Then don't lose it, don't back down, don't doubt what we're both trying to keep. She nodded, her eyes closing. That night, we didn't need to say any more words of love. The commitment was in the unwavering grip in the way. I stayed up late to wash glasses with her in the way her eyes followed me as I left the house, not regretful, but full of anticipation. Love doesn't need to make many promises. It just needs to stand firm in the face of fear once and still choose to stay. I chose, and this time there was no turning. After that conversation, we didn't retreat back. After that conversation, we didn't retreat, but we didn't step into the light either. We chose to stay in the grayed area between public and secret, a world that belonged to just the two of us, where everything happened quietly, discreetly, but full of truth, not because we were ashamed, but because we knew that this love needed time to grow steadily before facing the headwinds. Karen didn't come to my house anymore, except when my mother invited her. Those times, we still played the same roles as before. My mother's best friend, a calm woman talking politely to me like a grown-up grandchild, but between the random sentences our eyes searched for each other, a look that was longer than necessary, a pursed smile reserved only for the other. And after each session we texted, when you smile at my mother, I just want to kiss you. I finished picking vegetables for my mother, but thought I was expressing it to my sister. Love became a secret language, understood only by the two of us. On the days we didn't see each other, we called. Late at night, when my mother was asleep, when Karen turned off all the lights and lay quietly in her room, wedded about everything, work, life, old dreams, little things that no one cared about except lovers. One day, Karen told me about her deceased Father, how he used to read poetry in a hoarse voice every night one day. I told her about how I wanted to drop out of school to pursue photography, but then I didn't dare because I was afraid of making my mother sad. Pieces of the past were revealed. Not to boast, but to understand each other more deeply on free days. Karen drove to pick him up, and we escaped the city together, not far, just a suburban coffee shop of quiet. Tree-lined street or an empty lot where we can spread out a blanket and eat. Our sandwiches together at times like these. Karen takes off her shoes and steps onto the grass, eyes closed to catch the wind. I look at her and think, this is the most peaceful place in the world. Because she is there, we don't need much. No fancy restaurants, no big bouquets of flowers, just our own space. No one judging, no one staring, no one having to play a role every time. I sleep over at her house. We always wake up early, drink coffee together. In the kitchen, the morning light pouring through the window, Karen often wears a shirt a little longer than hers. Her hair is slightly messy, her feet are beret. Love that moment the most because it's real. No hiding, no makeup, no fancy words. Don't live in a fairy tale. We still have deadlines. We are tired. We have moments of silence because of small arguments. But after all, we still find each other like a small room, kept private in the middle of a bustling Lifano. One but us sees this. No pictures posted online, no holding hands in the street, no hugs in crowded parties, but well of each other fully, silently, and truly loving behind closed doors. Does not mean less, just deeper. One late autumn morning, while I late autumn morning was still half asleep, Karen sat down a cup of coffee in front of me and sat down on the chair across from me. The sunlight from the window fell on her hair, making everything warm and quiet. I think it's time we start planning for our real lives, she said. I raised an eyebrow. You meaners. Yeah, not going public right away, but we can't keep living in secret forever. And so we started talking about the future, not like dreamers, but like two adults measuring each step on a bumpy road. We looked at rental properties, not to move right away, but imagine, what would it be like to live together, a 2-bedroom apartment with a bright kitchen, a small balcony with room for plants and not two. Close to my mother's house. We don't need to be too far away, Karen said, just far enough to breathe. We noted the rent, the location of the nearest bus. Everything felt more real than ever. Karen started going to therapy again. 2. I'm not doing this because I'm crazy, she said, her voice casual, but her eyes deep. I'm doing it because I want to be strong enough to face the reactions of others, from your mother, your friends, society, and myself. I didn't ask any more questions. I just felt sorry for her, not because she was weak, but because she was brave, loving me. It's been a courageous journey preparing to protect that love, a silent victory. As for me, I started keeping a diary, not because I wanted to be a writer, but because I didn't know where to pour out my feelings except on paper. I wrote about the feeling of holding Karen's hand for the first time, about the strange beauty in her eyes. Every morning before brushing her teeth, a vague fear when my mother asked, "Where have you been?" I wrote about the future, imaginary conversations where me mother and I told the truth. One time I wrote, "Mom will cry, but then she will hug me." Another time I wrote, "Mabesh won't say anything she won't forgive." The pages didn't react. They just silently held the things I didn't dare say. We promised each other that by the end of the year, we would tell Mom an organization. No fuss, just a normal conversation, but real. Until then, we continued to prepare, not just to clean up our living space, but to clean up ourselves, our emotions, our fears, our hops. This love was no longer a secret. It was a plan, a deliberate choice, and no. It is growing day by day. December came slowly with a cool breeze and streetlights. The end of the year always felt like an end, but for Yusuf it was a beginning. We agreed before the year was over, we would tell the truth, no more dodging, no more beating around the bush, not because we wanted to challenge anyone, but because we had gone too far to turn back, and because it was time to live. Have you thought about all the possible scenarios? Karen asked me one afternoon as we sat in our usual coffee shop. I nodded, putting down my hot cocoa. She might cry, she might not say anything. She might be so angry that she wouldn't look at me for a while, but I also think she'll understand if she gives her time. Karen looked at me for a long time. You've changed A lot. I really fell in love, I said, for the first time in my life. I don't think of love as something to wait for or something to be vague about. It's something to choose every day. We agreed we'd tell her on December 30th. No holiday, no specimen, just a day close to the intersection of old and new quiet, enough to not be distracted and close enough tone. Turn the new year with something more real, I would do the talking. Karen agreed to stay away. At least at first I want to give you space with Mom, if she needs to talk later. I'm here during the last days of the year. I felt like time had slowed down every time. We had dinner together. Every time she asked how it was. Your day? I felt choked up. I wanted to tell her, but I was waiting for the right moment, the moment we'd chosen. I wasn't sure where it would go, but I was sure of one thing. If I kept it a secret any longer, I would lose myself, and true love should not live in the dark forever. On the evening of the 29th, Karan sent me a message. No matter what happens, I will choose you, and if necessary, I will stand outside that door waiting for you to come out after reading it. My heart stopped for a few beats. I texted back tomorrow. I will choose you this time, not just in my heart. I didn't know how my mother would react. Maybe she would be silent, maybe she would scream, maybe tears would fall, not out of anger, but out of pain. But I knew the only thing I could do was be honest with my mother, with Karen, and with myself. Because in the end, love is not something that needs to be approved by others, but something that must be lived clearly and completely. And that's how a spontaneous statement at a party, "Night I'll do anything just to be with you once," became a long journey for the past. 7 months Eve chosen Karen every day, quietly and silently now. I'm choosing her public Lynette, just once, but forever. Oh, I don't know what will happen after telling my mother. It may be difficult, it may hurt, but I know one thing, this love is real, and I don't want to live in the dark anymore. I chose Karen not just once, but many times in silence now. I choose her clearly, no hiding, no turning back, because true love deserves to come out into the light. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.